UTSA's first superstar. Now it didn't happen then. It happened obviously towards recently when the Hall of Fame came calling. But knowing you are at the high point of UTSA, there's three words NBA or three letters NBA that come across now. You were talked to by Dr. J, legend, Julius Erving, Moses Malone. You've been in the NBA circle with George, a lot of the San Antonio Spurs. You had summer workouts. When you knew you got drafted, how did that make you feel? Because the pinnacle is the NBA for every basketball player. Knowing you were going to be a part of that brotherhood, what was that emotion like getting that call?
Wow. That's a tough one for me because I have feelings that go both directions. When I got drafted, we had 10 rounds back then. As you know, today there are only 2. And a lot of people coming from a school that was basically just getting on the map. My sophomore year, I was the second leading sophomore scorer in the country behind Wayman Tisdale, rest in peace. And then my junior year, I went on to average 26 points and 10 rebounds. And I felt I was ready for the NBA. Physically, I was ready. Mentally, I still wasn't ready. But when I got that call, man, it was fantastic. But I had mixed emotions because a lot of people had projected me as a first-round draft pick. And then I ended up going in the 4th round. But what made things better was the team I got drafted by. I got drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers. And as you know, a lot of people don't know, I've known Dr. J, Julius Winfield Ervin. I've known him since I was 10 years old. And so to this day, I still don't know if Doc was part of the reason I got drafted. And I got to tell you a quick story. During the summer of the year I came out, we played a game here in San Antonio. San Antonio, the Spurs guys like Mike Mitchell, George Gervin, Johnny Moore, myself, the gentleman we talked about earlier, used to be your coach, Keith Edmondson. We played against a team from Houston. Moses Malone was a 76er at the time, but he was still living in Houston, and those were his guys. So we played Houston, right? We played them at the Jewish Community Center here, the original Jewish Community Center. We beat Houston. My first game playing with my brother. I'm just coming out of college. I had 37 points. George had 35 points. So that was, we made headlines, the Gervin brothers. And this is, before I even entered the pros. But, being drafted, it was a dream come true. That was why I put in all the work from the beginning. I always made sure I could carry a conversation with a person. I'm the kind that wanted to be able to talk to a lawyer, a doctor, a homeless person, a president, whoever it may be, and sound like I had some kind of education. So it was bigger than just the basketball for me, right? It was also about life skills. So getting drafted, it was a dream come true. All the things I have been through, the positives and the negatives, this was a day of positivity. And now I knew that I was headed in the direction that I wanted to be headed in, which was to play professional basketball for a living. Once I got drafted, what does that mean? That means I'm on my way.
On your way. And, it didn't work out in Philly because you ended up playing for the New Jersey Nets. And you always talk about your old coach, Bill Fitch, with New Jersey. You got somewhat of a good start in New Jersey. How was that feeling, knowing that you were getting time in New Jersey? You had some great teammates around you. It just started to feel like everything was coming to fruition as a Net.
Well, this is a message for the young people again. I got drafted in Philadelphia. You hear me? I was the last cut. But you know why I got cut? It goes back to what I told you about my inner city days. During the summer, instead of me out busting my behind, running every day, what am I doing? I'm taking shortcuts, smoking marijuana again, not preparing myself mentally for the task that was at hand. I thought I was physically ready. I was a long way from being mentally ready. So it cost me years of my career. I ended up going to play in Spain instead of the NBA. And I had to work myself back to the Nets in 1989. You know how old I was when I made the NBA? I was 26. You know how old I would have made it if I was doing the right things? 22. So that's a message for the young people again. Take care of your business and reap the benefits, or you will pay for it and you will have days of misery. I had days of misery not being in the NBA when I felt I should have been. And when the people around me knew that I should have been. I didn't blame my brother. I didn't blame my mother, my sisters. I looked in the mirror and I said, Derrick, this is all you're doing. You're the one that chose to live the nightlife. You're the one that chose to do this. You're the one that chose to keep your butt up at night instead of getting your rest for the task you were at that was at hand, that was coming up next. So I was glad when I finally got to the Nets, but I never, ever forgot, and I still don't to this day. Do the right things or you will pay for it. I got my NBA career, it started, but it would have started a lot earlier if I was being an adult and making adult decisions.
Being a net, you and I have talked many times about NBA life, and you mentioned not working hard, doing the wrong things instead of doing the right thing. You mentioned your career would have probably, flourished even more earlier in your life when it came to NBA life. The impact of your teammates, does that have any impact on you? Because thinking about it, we talked about Dr. J. We talked about your teammates, the team in Philadelphia. Had they gotten a hold of you knowing what you were doing, do you think you would have actually listened at the time? Because kids think they know it all. Even to this day, kids think they know it all. But adults have lived that life. You try to tell them, they blow it off. Derrick Gervin at the time with Philadelphia had Dr. J pulled you to the side and said, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Would you have listened to a legend like that?
That's a hard one because even with people telling you, it doesn't mean you're going to do the right thing. It could be Dr. J, it could be my mother, it could be you, it could be anyone. God has a plan for everyone. And timing is that's the biggest thing is timing. Dr. J could talk to me, but it's still up to me to follow through on the behavior. And so I don't know if I would have listened or not. I just know that those guys told me that I shouldn't have been cut, that I should have made the team. And I told them, no, I shouldn't have made the team. And I told Dr. J why. I told Moses Malone why. It was not, I don't blame the Nets. I don't blame Philadelphia for cutting me. I blame Derrick for cutting me. I'm the one that didn't put in the work. So, I try not to go back and, look at about if Doc would have talked to me. Doc has always talked to me. I still talk to him today. His nephew is on my phone. It's about you figuring out what's best for you. You making the right decisions. There's some decisions people can't help you with in life. You have to get yourself out of the trenches, as they say. And until you're ready to make those decisions, the timing is not going to be right. You can talk to someone about drugs, right? Don't do crack. Don't do this. But until they're ready to admit and look in the mirror and say, yes, I do have a problem, they can't be helped by anyone. It's no different in basketball. It's no different in life. I have to be able to look in the mirror and say, Derrick, that's enough. Do you want to have the career that you dreamed of having, or were you just talking? So it was up to me to follow through on the actions, right? I love Doc, I love Moses, all those guys, but Derrick Gervin was the one at the end of the day that had to be able to say, I'm here, I want to be here, I have to do the things that's necessary to be here. And that's where I am even at this point in my life, my man. I talk to you, you and I talk every day just about. I'm still trying to become a better person. I don't look back at my failures as failures because what I tell you earlier, those failures have me sitting here talking to you today, right? Everything in my life has been scripted by the man above. All I'm doing now for the rest of my life is trying to follow his plan. And that's where I am.
So God's plan that you mentioned, because, you and I always talk about that. God's plan wasn't the NBA. Let's kind of make that in light. We feel it wasn't the NBA. God's plan was to say, let me get you far away from the NBA and let me take you overseas. Because where your brother's legacy was made in the NBA and his impact, you had the same impact overseas. What is it? MVP, two-time scoring champion. To this day, people still know you, how great of a player you were. What was that overseas experience? Because I think it all came to light when you became an overseas legend.
Well, if you look at the NBA, as you know, as a rookie, I averaged 12 points in 16 minutes. Not many people did that. So I got my opportunity to shine in the NBA. I still have people in New Jersey today on Facebook. I remember you, and I thought you'd have a longer NBA career, right? But there's a thing called a back injury that happened. And so that tells me God had another plan for me, right? It didn't have to be NBA. If you look at it, does money have a, say, NBA on there? Where on there does it say NBA?
It's worldwide.
Okay. So I had to figure out what I was going to do after my back injury. I got hurt with the Nets, and that paved the way for another guy who's historic by the name of Drazen Petrovic. My injury with the Nets led to Drazen Petrovic becoming a member of the New Jersey Nets. So even that, I mean, God had a plan again, right? Draz was sitting on the bench in Portland. Derrick Gervin gets hurt in New Jersey. Hey, the ship keeps on sailing, my man. So I decided I'm going to go overseas and play. At that time in the NBA, we didn't have chartered flights. Mm-hmm. So we were playing 4 or 5 games in a week. You know, that's a lot. I'm sitting in the airport for 3 or 4 hours. My back is killing me. So I had a decision. I had 2 choices. I could retire from basketball, or I can go overseas and play once or twice a week. I decided to go overseas and play once or twice a week. I get to Spain in 1987. I get over there playing with Ron Brewer. There's a guy who also played with the Spurs when George was playing. And some people might remember, my brother missed 3 games with the Spurs. Those 3 games, Ron Brewer scored at least 40 points in all 3 of them. So when George came back, he had to remind people who he was, right? But so I go over to Spain that year. I averaged 48 points a game. Still to this day, people tell me, no, you didn't do that. No way. That's not possible. It's very possible. I say, because I did it. So I averaged 48. I guess because the next leading scorer was averaging 33, people thought it wasn't real. But that paved the way for my European career. They treated me over there like Michael Jordan. I got the Michael Jordan treatment. But I was a little more mature then. I'm 24 years old. I felt like at that time, Michael Jordan was the best scorer in the world in the NBA. And I felt like I was the best scorer in the world in Europe. And if you come down to me and Michael, best scorer, you got to pick it. I don't know which one. And that's how I felt. So, I mean, I went over to Europe and played. I had a very successful career. I won the scoring title over there twice. And I want you to think about this. I won here in the Continental Basketball Association. I won 2 scoring titles. So how many does that give me overall?
4.
4 scoring titles overall in my basketball career. How many did my brother win?
I'm going to say 4.
George Gervin won 4 scoring titles. Derrick Gervin won 4 scoring titles. That's a book within itself.
That it is. And it's kind of funny because you mentioned Drazen. And I've always thought about it, not realizing it till now when we talk about God's plan. You're talking about one of the greatest European players getting traded technically for one of the best NBA players and one of the generational players, as the Gervin last name goes. So Draz came here, you went over there. Y'all both had brilliant careers. We all know Drazen, had a car crash.
27 years old, man. Passed away at 27 years old.
Way too soon. But now looking at that overseas, that impact you had, the scoring titles, I mean, 48 a game. Did that put your mind and heart to rest thinking, okay, I got to the NBA. Wasn't for me right now. I came overseas. I've got the career I wanted. I'm okay with that.
I was more than okay with that. My goal was to play in the NBA and at least get so people know who I am. They got to know who I am, and they certainly knew who I was in New Jersey. But I'm gonna tell you what made it all worthwhile. I went and played overseas for 11 years, right? But I played in Israel 3 years, and the last 2 years I went back intentionally. I didn't. I went for less money, and the reason this is all worthwhile is because people we read the Bible, right? So when I went to Israel, I got to see things firsthand. I went to Jerusalem, I went to Bethlehem, just things like that, Nazareth. And I'm a studious guy. I wanted to understand about the Bible. But to be there and to get to learn the culture, the holidays. There was a family that took me in. When I lived in Israel with my wife, we stayed in the house with a family. They were upstairs. Big place like this. They were upstairs and we had the whole bottom. And so they treated me like I was a son, right? They took me to all the holidays. I had a bomb shelter right outside my house, man. That's just crazy. Right outside. Walk out the door, there's a bomb shelter, right? But I didn't ever have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. I was very fortunate, okay? But the experience alone, man, they took my wife, they took her on a tour on the bus around Israel. And, them making her happy, what is that doing? They're winning me over just by taking care of my wife. So I've already, before I shot a basketball over there, I'm already in heaven, my man. I done traveled. I got a chance, like I said, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv. They giving my wife the treatment. I come home, my wife's smiling. What do you think that's going to do for me? So, I mean, happy. That was absolutely fantastic. Just that talking about that just gets me emotional. Those are days you can never replace. It doesn't have to be in the United States for you to have a good life. I love this. I think this is the greatest country in the world, but it's not the only country in the world.
So the struggles you had with, marijuana, the late nights, the women, the gawking of women, the partying, looking back at the basketball career, you mentioned God's plan. We've been talking about that. Do you think him creating that path, taking you over there to see the parts of the Bible, to experience stuff that you got to see firsthand, is that God's way of saying, you know what? Let's refocus. Let's get you back on that path for you by sending you overseas.
Overseas, it kind of helped me because not just the basketball, it was when I was in Spain that year, I was one of the three kings. So way before LeBron James, Derrick Gervin was a king in 1987, right? So and this is funny today, some people might get offended, but look, I got a picture on Facebook of myself and all the young kids out there with me. And they had on the black makeup, or some say blackface today. But I didn't look at it that way. They were trying to make me happy, okay? So I'm not going to get into the politics, all that other stuff. Kids became my life. And the city I was in, Cordoba, Spain, I lived on the street with a whole bunch of little kids on the street. And so I couldn't sleep, man. They used to be outside. I'm on the 3rd level, and they used to be outside my house every morning. And they call me Jedving. They pronounce my name Jedving over there. So every morning, man, my wife and I, we trying to sleep, and you hear kids like 8 in the morning, Jedving, Jedving, Jedving. And so I can't sleep. I might as well get up, right? I go outside. I started signing all the autographs, and I told them I can't do this every day. How about just give me some hugs instead of me having to sign every day, right? So I started playing soccer with them out in the street, and then the parents got to know me. They started letting me take their kids around the city. It's a city that you could walk. It would take us about 30 minutes to get downtown, right? So the parents trusted me enough to be with their kids. I started walking around the city. And you could just hear the people blowing the horn. Big 6'8" black guy walking around. Just imagine. But no one treated me bad. The kids absolutely loved me. The sad part was eventually I had to move after a few months because it got overwhelming. I couldn't sleep, man. I wasn't able to get my rest. And so one day I had to tell all the kids. I went outside and I talked to all the kids, a big old, like hundreds of kids out in the middle of the street. And I got in the middle and I gave them the news that I was moving next week. And man, see those kids crying. Wow. Broke my heart, okay? But I explained to them why I had to move. I let them know that I would still be coming around. It wasn't really like I was moving. I was just changing locations. And the young people became my life. And as you know, we'll get into it more. Wow, they're still my life today. And they'll be my life to the day I die. So that's the impact kids have on me. That's bigger than basketball for me.